Let's say you're a beginner and you want to make cartoon backgrounds for your animation project, or maybe for a game. Where do you even start? Last time I showed you my 5-step technique for learning and making cartoon backgrounds, link in the description if you missed it. Today I want to share some of the best shows to begin applying that technique. These are beloved, well-known cartoons with visual styles that still look fantastic today, but work perfectly with vector tools, and that are simple enough for you to start practicing right away. And if you really want to master background design in Inkscape, you should definitely check my special 13 courses bundle, but more on that later. Okay, first, let's set some quick parameters. We are looking at cartoon shows specifically. Of course, you could study any kind of background art, but let's be honest, studying from actual TV cartoons is way more fun, and you know the art quality is pro level, even when it's simple. And second, the show has to be something that can mostly replicate with Inkscape. That rules out a lot of heavily hand-painted animation like most anime, which leans too much on textures and painterly rendering. That's why most of these picks tend to go to Western, children-oriented cartoons. And by the way, you don't need to go buy a DVD set of these shows. I'll remind you can easily find screen caps on sites like animationscreencaps.com or fancaps.net. Okay, here's the list. Dexter's Laboratory. This late 90s Cartoon Network classic was, and still is, enormously influential regarding the way it looks. It was heavily inspired by the Hanna-Barbera cartoons of the 60s and 70s, but modernized with cleaner lines and simplified shapes. You can see how later seasons especially leaned into a vector-friendly look, so you know this style is achievable in Inkscape. I would study this show if I wanted to learn how to design labs, technology, or anything with a sciencey feel. The Powerpuff Girls. Another 90s cartoon classic, like Dexter's Laboratory, it started out hand-drawn with some textures, but moved into a very clean digital look once computers came into play. The backgrounds are incredibly simple, but so clever in how they suggest a whole city or interior space without overloading on details. I studied this show to learn how to simplify environments like interiors, but more specifically cityscapes and that sort of backgrounds. The Fairly Odd Parents. In the early 2000s, this show managed to mix the 90s cartoon style and the more abstract graphic look inspired by UPA. The result was something that feels more modern to me and very vector friendly. The backgrounds often leaned into super simple shapes with these abstract elements here and there. I'd study this show if I wanted something more abstract and graphic, while still feeling like a cartoon background. Samurai Jack. Now, here's one that comes with a small warning. Samurai Jack's backgrounds are gorgeous, but they often use heavy stylization combined with textures, which aren't Inkscape's strongest area. That being said, the way it uses flat shapes, strong silhouettes, and minimalistic composition is truly a goldmine for learning. I'd study this show if I wanted to learn stylization, the use of simple shapes, and how to achieve a cinematic look. Star vs. the Forces of Evil. This is the show I used in my original 5-step technique video. I love how this show looks. Unlike many modern Disney shows, it manages to balance simple shapes with just enough detail to feel more lively. It relies less on textures and more on gradients and line work to create depth, which makes it very vector friendly. The color palettes are also fantastic. I'd study this show if I wanted a mystical and surrealistic background with a magical feeling color scheme. Pucca. Here's a bit of a personal pick. When I was a kid, I clearly remember a show called Pucca, and what really caught my attention is that it appeared to be animated in Flash. I know it was based on a very popular Flash animation, also called Pucca, but for some reason the way it looked got stuck in my head as the ultimate way Flash and vector cartoons should look. Looking at it now, I can see the backgrounds are pure vector gold, with clean geometric look that's easy to draw using Flash or even Inkscape. And yes, sometimes they lean a bit too much into the Flash style, but that's also what makes it simple and approachable to study, in my opinion. I'd study this show if I wanted to go back to the basics of vector illustration, while still having something that looks great. UPA, United Productions of America. Okay, this one is cheating a little bit. It's not a single show, but a style popularized by a very well-known animation studio, UPA, which were active from the 40s to the 60s, and they were famous for its experimental design-heavy look. They created classics like Mr. Magoo, and they influenced a ton of other classic shows like The Pink Panther and Rocky and Bullwinkle. Their work was groundbreaking because it treated backgrounds as graphic compositions rather than something realistic, and that influence is still visible in many modern cartoons. I'd study UPA-like backgrounds if I wanted to explore heavily graphic backgrounds that push design over realism. There are of course countless other shows that could fit here. These are just some of my top recommendations. In the end, an artist's job is to study art in order to create art. So if none of this show clicks with you, just search around. Check out Wikipedia for cartoon lists, and when you find a style you like, study it. That's what will keep you motivated. By the way, if you're serious about learning Inkscape for characters, backgrounds, and full game art, I put together a bundle of 13 complete courses. It's over 70 hours of content, and it's the fastest way to really level up. Link in the description. That's it for today's video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week. Bye.